If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This has been another episode sponsored by Online Horse College. If you haven't had a look at the wide variety of equine-specific accredited courses, then go to onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there. It's lovely to have Joanne Verikios back again on Horse Chats, another expert who gives freely her time and advice for people to listen to. Today she's going to talk about 10 questions to ask when selecting a child's pony. How are you, Joanne?
I'm really well, thanks, Glenys. How are you?
Oh, very good. Yeah. Joanne, this 10 questions to ask when selecting a child's pony. I know that you've got a lot of advice, and we've talked before in a previous episode about your book, Winning Horsemanship, A Judge's Secret and Tips for Your Success. But this one about selecting a child's pony sort of gone off in a little bit. And I know you've got lots of experience in a lot of areas in the horse industry, but why did you particularly select this one?
I guess, Glenys, it's because it's something I actually get asked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And there are always parents coming up with children, and it's very important. And you mentioned my experience. Well, I also have experience of a little girl who wanted a pony more than anything in the world.
Yes.
And I spent 8 years begging for one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to get it right. And I think it's equally important to establish whether your child really wants a pony. And, how do you know that? How do you know it won't be a phase? They will either be like me and carry on with horses for a lifetime, or they'll be like my sister who got a pony because I had a pony, and her pony turned around one day and bit her on the foot and she never rode it again. So,
yes.
If my pony bit me on the foot, I would have concealed that, so in case my parents got rid of the pony. You've got to be able to sort out the passion. But basically, I think what's important about it is this is the start of the journey with horses for so many people. And as a parent, the ones who ask me about it, they want to get it right, and they should be looking to select a pony which has the ability to build their child's confidence so that the child can learn and have fun without being afraid, and what preferably won't be bitten on the foot either.
Yes.
So you want, of paramount importance, I would say, A, the safety of the child and the parents, especially if they're not horsey parents, and B, the happiness and comfort of the horse or pony in providing quality of service over a long and consistent working life.
Mm-hmm.
So just to recap, does your child really want a pony? And the other key question that informs all my answers is, what is your child's life worth?
Yes. They're probably 2 pre-questions to ask before we even get into this 10 questions to ask when selecting a child's pony, aren't they?
Yeah, there's a duty of care in saying any of this, which I take very seriously, and I know you do too.
Yep. All right, I'm really keen to do this because I have seen people who have been very confident, keen riders, purchase a horse that's not been suitable, and then they lose interest. So I've seen that, and I think it's very important to make sure that not only do they have something that is safe and is going to give them confidence, but one that they're going to enjoy and just keep going with.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, the first question we should ask about the pony is, how old is the pony? So can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, I think that's critical. And why is it critical? Just in case there are inexperienced people listening, it's because the older a pony is, the more of life it's seen, the more experience it's had, and the more likely it is to be level-headed when faced with unfamiliar situations. So my rule of thumb is, the younger the child, the older the pony. And as a guide, how old is that? Well, aged between 8 and 15 years for the pony, not the child, is probably a good range. But I would say don't discount some ponies over 15, even 20, because they often seem to last a bit longer than their bigger counterparts. And I remember when I was at Pony Club, there were plenty of ponies over 20 years old zooming around and doing a great job because, let's face it, a child isn't very heavy, and Pony Club work is short, sharp and terrific, but it's not a constant wear and tear kind of proposition. Such as some horses are subjected to. So they're the two basic things. And then there are a couple of other considerations about age, unless you had a comment there, Glenys.
No, I like that. The younger the child, the older the pony. So keep going. Yep.
It's important to ask what age the pony was when they were broken in.
Yes.
If they were broken in at a normal kind of age, which is, between 3 and 5, say, that's fine. If they came in off a station or off the range or something and they were older, then they might not be suitable for a beginner, even though they're in the age range, because they don't have that many miles under their girth as a riding horse. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then the other thing is, how do they carry their age? Are they a young 20 or a very old 12? So there's, all sorts of things in between. And I would stress, I guess, that people don't just take this list or this podcast and go and look at horses, that they do get a knowledgeable person to go with them or advise them.
Yes, I think this is the list to start to look, isn't it? But then before making the decision, to ask someone a little bit more knowledgeable. Yeah.
And then one last thing. With age, you can expect a bit of wear and tear as well.
Yes.
A few scars and lumps and bumps, and as long as they don't affect the usability of the pony, they're not a big deal.
Good. All right, the next one we've got is how big the pony. This is number 2. How big is the pony?
Yes, on bigness or size, we are talking about two things actually, height and build. And I suppose if you think about build more in terms of width, especially for very young children, a narrow-built pony can be easier for them to sit on than a roly-poly round pony. But it's better to get a pony that's a little bit on the big side, in my opinion, because you don't want your child to grow out of it too soon, and then you've got to make this heartbroken transition to something bigger. Just more by luck than management, I think my first pony was a 5-year-old mare. She was 12 3-hands high, and I got her when I was 9 and rode her exclusively till I was about 13. So, a fair few years. And then my second pony was 3 years old, 14 hands, so younger, bigger. I was a much better rider by then. And I got him at about 14. And then I kept them both going, because actually, Glenys, I never grew out of ponies. I started breeding warm bloods, but I could still ride a 12-hand pony and not look big.
Yeah.
But both those ponies died at home of old age, so we kept them and looked after them into their old age. So growing out is an issue. So I think height for a child's pony between about 11 hands and even up to 16 hands, which isn't a pony, of course, it's a horse, but some children are quite tall, and, beginners come in all shapes and ages as well. A bigger horse, a bigger pony can be a bit smoother to ride as well. It's a longer movement. And smaller child can ride a taller pony than is strictly suitable for them, but a very tall child really can't ride a Shetland or something like that because their feet are going to be on the ground. Yeah. So if you're looking for a pony for a couple of children to share or a family to share, then get one big enough for the largest rider to grow into. And on that score, I've got nothing against miniatures, but I don't think they're a great choice for someone wanting to learn to ride and go on with, simply because they are of limited size, limited weight bearing, etc., etc.
Yes, they're very cute, but they can't hold much weight, can they?
No.
All right. Now the next one, the temperament and the manners.
Basically, you want a great temperament and a well-mannered horse. And the first one is inbred, inborn, an innate thing. But the second one is training and lessons. So they're both important. You need a good temperament to start with, I think, and you can teach them manners, but in a beginner's pony, you want them both mannerly and kind. And I would say very quiet. And for a first pony, not a first child, preferably bomb-proof, both on the ground and ridden. And, bomb-proof is a subjective thing, but I think most people know what that means.
Yep. Now, to do with the temperament there, any particular breed?
Most ponies actually are pretty good and quite tolerant. All horses and ponies tend to understand when they're faced with a young animal, whether it's a child or a puppy or a kitten or something, and they're much more tolerant than they would be of someone who, in their opinion, perhaps should know better. It's not really a temperament thing, but I would say for a child's pony, a mare or a gelding, and absolutely no stallions or rigs, no matter what.
Sure.
I know there are exceptions and, children ride stallions, but this is my contribution to this podcast, and I would not go there. We talked about duty of care before, and also no ex-race horses, even small ones. Again, there's a vendor duty of care there, and also ours. But, that said, no horse or pony is perfect. So if you've got to compromise, then I would compromise on things like price, age or size, but I wouldn't compromise on safety.
Yep. What about experience and training? This is point number 4.
Yeah, it kind of flows on, and it flows on from age. So if it's to be a riding pony, you want it experienced under saddle. You don't want it to be girthy. You don't want it to buck or pig root or anything under, normal conditions. So well-trained and safe. And preferably, especially if the family who are going to be acquiring the pony are inexperienced, it's good if the pony's experienced on the lunge or maybe even in harness. That can have a civilizing effect on them. And preferably ex-pony club or adult riding club, ex-riding school even, retired dressage horse or schoolmaster. As I said before, one with some miles under the girth, and the best way to find these, they're like quite rare and valuable creatures, but the best way to find them is through word of mouth and networks like Pony Club.
Yes, and maybe one that someone else has grown out of.
Exactly, that's the perfect scenario. And then, especially if you know the family and how it's been, and maybe have even seen it at Pony Club or whatever, it's a good introduction.
Okay. Now, what about number 5? We've got health and soundness.
Yes, and that covers a world of interesting issues. Ponies are generally pretty tough and sound and robust and easy to keep, probably more so than horses, who can be more highly strung, some of the breeds. But I would say this podcast is headed questions to ask. So ask the vendor about any current illnesses, any recent illnesses, any unsoundness, history of veterinary problems, because they need to disclose these to you. And if a horse has had something and recovered, well, it needn't be a big deal. But if it's a chronic issue like has laminitis every spring or something, this is a very good thing to know about, because it's going to cause the pony pain, but also mean that your child is without a pony to ride, and then there's the associated costs of vet bills and things. So I would say you want it to be serviceably sound, healthy, sturdy. Most of them are good doers, so easy to feed. It's a good idea, depending on price, but especially if the asking price is high, to get an independent vet check, Glenys. You need the pony to be checked to see if it's blind, because some of them compensate very well, or, might being blind in one eye isn't necessarily a big deal, but being blind or limited sight in both eyes is a problem. You don't want it to be lame or unsound in any way. You'd have the teeth checked to make sure the worming's up to date, vaccinations are up to date, all that sort of thing.
Wait, can you hear anything? No? That's because we're waiting for someone with a good quality horse product to be advertised here. If that's you, then contact us, horsechats@horsechats.com, and we'll send you the details. Thanks.
And we talked a little bit before about experience and training, but you've got here now vices and bad habits. And I was just thinking about that pony that bit your sister on the foot.
Yes. I don't know what my sister might have done to invite the bite on the foot, because you can't discount the fact that an inexperienced child does the wrong thing.
Sure.
However, a well-mannered pony really has no excuse for turning around and biting someone on the foot. So I'm very intolerant of bad habits on the part of beginners' ponies, and I would say you do not want it to have any vices, such as biting, nipping, kicking, crib biting, wind sucking, weaving, rearing, bucking, pig rooting, etc. You want it to keep all its feet on the ground unless you're asking it to move or jump, and keep its mouth to itself. So the rule there is you may touch the pony's mouth, but it should not be touching you with its mouth in any kind of unpleasant way.
Mm-hmm.
And the other vices I mentioned, stable vices and what have you, they're things like wind sucking and unsoundness and should be disclosed anyway.
Okay, good. All right, now the next one, we've got easy to handle and ride. And you did talk about sometimes some of your clients are people from non-horsey families. So not only is the child getting their first pony, and a child's first pony in an experienced horse household is one thing, but a child's first pony with inexperienced parents is totally another, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And the pony needs to be easy to catch and lead and groom and shoe and trim and put on a float. And, of course, the seller can often demonstrate all of this to you very well, because the pony's in the home environment and the seller is probably an experienced horse person, or at least experienced with that pony. So this is where another of my points comes in about availability for a trial. But you would want, if you can only see the pony at its home premises, ask if it can be turned loose and your child can try catching it and brushing it and picking up feet. And this also gives you and the child an instant lesson, you the parent I mean, in how to handle a pony, what it's used to, that sort of thing. So yes, exactly. You want an inexperienced parent to be able to do anything the child can do, and both of you to be able to do what the seller can do with the pony within reason.
Yeah. All right, now point number 8, you've talked about the attitude to other horses, farm animals, dogs, cats, etc. What could go wrong there if they didn't have a good attitude to the other horses and farm animals?
Yes, that's a good way of looking at it. So if it's not civilised with other horses or socialised with other horses, you won't be very popular at an agistment paddock, perhaps. And also it will make life less pleasant for your child, because at pony club or on trail rides or just going out for a ride with a friend, you don't want your pony to be constantly trying to bite the horse next to it or kick the horse next to it, or equally disturbing, being terrified of being kicked or bitten by next to it and skittering away. And the other thing that can go wrong is if your pet dog or pet cat goes into the yard where the pony is, you don't want the pony to suddenly turn into a rampaging animal trying to get rid of that predator.
Yep.
And you don't want it to freak out by seeing an alpaca or a cow or a goat or other farm animals either.
Yes.
So the more life experience the ponies had, and as I said before, most of them are pretty adaptable and will quickly learn these things. But it's good to ask the seller, have they ever seen an alpaca, if you know you've got one living next to you, or if you've that sort of thing, because you can then be prepared that it might be a novel experience and the pony might need a bit of adjustment.
Yes. And they do worry about smells from other animals, don't they? I can remember teaching one time at Pony Club and a circus pulled up and there was an elephant there, and a couple of the ponies weren't very happy at all.
Yes, and I've heard of a horse bolting because it saw a camel, and even when it was in the float going home from the show where it had seen the camel, it was looking in terror over its shoulder. Where is the camel?
Yes,
it must have still had camel in its nostrils.
And another one, I had sold a pony that used to float very easy. When we say float, we mean, trailer going into a lorry or a truck. Very good. It was always very good. And I'd sold the pony, everything was fine, wouldn't load and didn't know what was going on, And then there was an old horseman and he said, they've got goat manure in that float, don't you? So that's what it was. It was the smell of the goat manure, and all of a sudden the horse who would normally load very easy just didn't want to go in at all.
Yes, isn't that interesting? And just so logical when you notice that the goat manure is there.
Yes.
And a bit of horse manure can probably set the horse's mind at rest.
Yeah. Anyway, that's number 8. What have we got for number 9? You've got available for trial. You already talked a little bit about it, but would you like to go on and talk a bit more?
Sure. It's really great if the horse is available for trial, because you can take it to your place, you can test it out with your child, you can see if everything works, if they get on. But a lot of people, especially those who value their horses and ponies and don't want them, messed around, especially by inexperienced people who might inadvertently do the wrong thing and upset their training in some way or their health even. Some people won't allow them out for trial, and I respect that. It's great if you can do it. And I have a story personally. My first pony, Beauty, was given to us on trial. I mean, my parents were going to buy her, but the fellow selling her said, "Now, don't tell Joanne that this is for her. Tell her that it's my pony and she can borrow her for a while." And I, of course, saw straight through that, and I knew that this was my pony and she was always going to be my pony, and she was never going back to the vendor. Yep. So I don't know. I think it depends a little bit on the child as well and their psyche. I think a trial where they love a pony and then it's sent back could be disappointing too. So, there's pros and cons. But if you do have a horse on trial, my recommendation in this day and age is that you have some kind of contract, pre-purchase trial and lease documentation, which, is quite simple to draw up, but can help protect both parties. Just how, what's the current status of the horse and its health, or pony and its health, and maybe even take some photos. Here it is on arrival, and then, it should, of course, go back in the same condition.
Yes.
Or better condition.
Yep. All right. The last one we've got is number 10, is the asking price.
Yes, it's deliberately last because I think all the other things are more important. However, the cost of acquisition shouldn't exceed your budget. So there's no need to go crazy. Keep looking. But the other thing is, it's not just the purchase price. And anyone who's ever owned a horse knows this. But for people who are embarking on their first horse, they need to realise there is also an outlay for a saddle, for a bridle, for a halter, brushes, rugs, etc. And then ongoing things like seed, farrier, hoof trims, teeth and management, dental management, and various veterinary costs, both routine in terms of vaccination, worming, fecal egg counts, and then possibly, heaven forbid, but possibly injuries and things like that to manage.
Yes. And I think that's an important consideration, because if you haven't got the money up your sleeve for those things, maybe regular lessons until you're ready is probably a better option.
Exactly, and that is a really good option, and that then means that the young person can possibly manage a pony that isn't quite the perfect, as beginner's pony. They can deal with, a few extra things. They're better able to get on by themselves, all sorts of things like that.
Yep.
If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com.
All right, Joanne, can we just run through those just in case people have missed the points? If you could just basically go through point number 1 and briefly speak about that.
Okay, so number 1 was how old is the pony, and the key issue is the younger the child, the older the pony should be. My recommended age range would be starting at 8 years old for the pony. Now, my first pony was 5 and that worked out, so, there's always pluses and minuses, and don't discount even older ponies. But make sure that they have some experience under saddle, that they're not just old because no one rode them for 20 years.
Yes. Number 2, how big is the pony?
Number 2 is height and build, and height is If in doubt, go for a bigger pony that the child can grow into or that suits the oldest or largest child in the family. And don't get one that's too small even for quite a young or small child, because they will grow into it and you don't want them to grow out of it too quickly.
Okay.
Also, a narrower build is easier for young children or short-legged children to ride. A medium build is like ideal. It's the Goldilocks porridge pony. But if everything else is great, then a wide build is fine. You can learn to ride pretty much anything. You see children riding draft horses. So
all right then.
Don't put off by build.
Temperament and manners is number 3.
Yes, that's paramount. Good temperament and good manners are really, really important. And the more bomb-proof the pony or horse, the better.
Okay. Number 4 is experience and training.
Yeah. So you want the pony to have some experience in what you want it to do. So if it's a riding pony, experienced under saddle. If it's been to pony club or been used in a riding club of some description, that's great because it will have had experience in different riders as well and know what to expect. So some experience on the lunge and that sort of thing, or in harness, is also useful.
Good. The health and soundness of the pony.
Yes. You want it to be functionally sound, and as I said, under age in the initial interview, some wear and tear is quite acceptable because for a beginner's pony, you're not expecting them to, win a hacking class or that sort of thing. So some lumps and bumps and scars are okay. Being very hairy is okay. What's more important is that the horse's senses, the pony's senses are good, so he or she can see, is not lame, doesn't have a chronic problem like laminitis. Ulcers and things like that are not so common in ponies as in horses. But a vet check can really be helpful there if your budget will stretch to it and if you're paying a lot of money. But ask the owners about their health and their history.
All right. Now, number 6 was the vices or bad habits.
Basically, I have zero tolerance to vices and bad habits in a child's pony. So you don't want them to bite, to nip, to kick, and you really don't want them to do any other things that either affect their soundness or their usefulness or their acceptability. In an agistment yard, you don't want them to teach other horses to crib bite and windsuck, for instance. And certainly, rearing is very, very dangerous. Bucking is very, very dangerous. As I said at the outset, you need to ask yourself, what is my child's life worth? Because, let's face it, accidents can happen and a helmet and lessons will only go so far. So the more you can reduce the probability of anything going wrong by buying the right pony, the better.
Okay. All right. Now you've got one that's number 7. We had easy to handle and ride.
Yes, you want the horse or pony to be easy to do all the basics with: catch, lead, groom, shoe, trim, put on a float, saddle up, bridle, unsaddle, unbridle, and not just by an experienced adult. You want your child to be able to do it, and you also want, if you're an inexperienced adult, to be able to do it as well if you need to step in and help.
Yeah. All right. Now the attitude to other horses, farm animals, dogs, cats.
Your child will have a much nicer experience riding out with others if your pony gets on well with other horses and isn't either afraid of them or aggressive towards them. Mm-hmm. And your family will have greater harmony if the pony doesn't chase their dog or the cat. And everyone will be better off and safer if there is no great fear of other animals like cattle, goats, alpacas, camels. If you have something like that living in your neighbourhood, perhaps ask the vendor how they think the pony would go when they saw it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, if the horse is available for a trial or a pony's available for a trial, just a bit of a summary there.
A great situation because you get to try before you buy. It may not be possible because the vendor may have reservations or perhaps the distance is too great to ship the pony to your place and back again if it doesn't work out. It can be really good for the child, but can also be a wrench for the child if the pony isn't suitable and has to go back. That may be difficult for a child to understand. But in any event, if you do take one on trial, I'd recommend getting some documentation around mutual expectations there.
All right. And the last thing was the asking price.
Yes, last but not least, not the most important thing, but obviously subject to your budget, it can be a very important thing. But the cost of actually buying the pony is only the start, because you need equipment for him or her and feed and other care items and services.
Yeah. All right. Now, this was just a list to get started, but to talk to people and get an experienced horse person around. And I know that you do this to a lot of people and go and look at their ponies. And you also offer an online service for people who don't live in your area. So can you talk a little bit about that and maybe the website, just to let people know that's available, and also talk about your contact details?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I actually was inspired by the lead up to this podcast, Glenys, so thank you for that, to say, well, it's all very well to be able to get a person in person to come with you, but if you can't, or if you want a second or a third opinion, it would be great to have an inexpensive service where, so how mine works is that if you're interested in doing it, it's a nominal price, $50, and I will send you basically an educational exam paper that you then complete on behalf of your prospective horse and pony, which will answer some of these questions, means you communicating with the vendor, and also ideally a video, but at least some photographs. And then I will evaluate what I see, and within the limitations of not being able to actually go and see and ride and touch the pony, give you some recommendations and a actually pretty comprehensive report on what I observe and what might be further things to explore, or the suitability of the horse or pony. So it's not just related to beginners' ponies. It could be any kind of competition horse, or another of my specialties is breeding warm bloods, so a breeding prospect as well. Mm-hmm. So a whole different set of different but similar criteria there.
And that $50, that's Australian, isn't it? Which often is about, 2/3 US, depending on the day?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not sure what it would be in US, but currency calculate, I think,
I think
2/3.
I think what you offered, it's available anywhere in the world, so they can all jump on the website. What's the best way to contact you then?
They can. Well, the website is www.winninghorsemanship, all one word, winninghorsemanship.com. And then the pre-purchase exam is under a tab called services, so /services. My email is horsemanship@ternode.net. And that's probably enough. People can telephone me if they want. The Australian number is +61 457 681 998. So if you're in Australia, 0457 681 998.
All right. And that email, I presume, is going to be on your website anyway, and it'll also be on Horse Chats, horsechats.com/Joanne Verikios, Joanne Verikios 2, either one of those. The contact details will be on there. Or just go to horsechats.com, search for Joanne.
Fabulous. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Joanne, very much for coming and taking the time to give us that information today. If people are listening, if people are even thinking about, even experienced people thinking, right, I've been asked to go and look for a pony for someone, or going to look at a pony, it's a good checklist to go through, and just sort of, as you say, it's the experienced horse person that really needs to read between the lines, but it's a good checklist to start with. So thanks for that, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime soon.
Thank you, and I hope it was useful, and it's always a pleasure. Thanks, Glenys.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Now, if you're still there, you probably know that I'm absolutely passionate about education within the horse industry. That's why I host this podcast. My other venture is Online Horse College. Have a look now at onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.